What's up, guys? We are building another four-door truck. So this here is a 69 GMC Suburban, and we are making it a four-door with full-length rear doors and a short bed. No, it's not going to stay on the C60 frame. I'm just using this frame because it's super long and straight, and it's going to be easy to build off of. It's the frame this truck was on. Also, to answer people's questions, yes, I am going to paint this truck this winter, or at least do as much as I can to work in that direction. My dad is having a shop built right now, and his Cadillac is currently in my garage as we are doing the engine. So once that's out of the garage, then we can focus on this, and this will hopefully be to a point where I can just throw it outside and cover it up with a tarp for a while, so that way I have my whole garage to tear that truck apart and focus on it. But anyway, here is the passenger side door on backwards, and I did this just to like come up with some ideas. So this has the square section, which is something I need. I'm not going to do a suicide door. I think that would just not look cool. And that's how much shorter the Suburban door is than a full-length door. Of course, the cab's not square. None of this cab is bolted to the frame. I just have it sitting up here, and I've been, you know, cutting out sections where I need to get it as close as it is already. But today we're going to start going into it and getting more done. So first things first, I'm going to cut out rockers both sides. This side's not really in my way right now, but this side is in my way if I'm going to build myself a B-pillar today. I need access to this whole area. I need to make sure this piece is solid underneath here, which I got this door on here right now. Anyway, all this is gonna have to be cleaned up. I think honestly what I'm gonna do is cut the rocker out and then also cut out right inside this body line. I'm not planning on using the floor out of this truck, so honestly it's just kind of in my way. So in case you missed the last video, here's what happened. This was a Suburban at the beginning of the last video, and the video before that I put the mirrors on it, put the GMC front end on there, made sure all the doors are square and that they operated. And then the beginning of the last video, I cut the Suburban off there, did a whole bunch of other crap in the last video too. And then at the end of the last video, finally got my lift working where I could do this easily, and pulled it off the Suburban frame, sat it on this frame, cut out this cab, set it up here, and we are in the general shape of what I'm going for here. Also in the last video, I cleaned up all the roof rails up there, so all that's wire wheeled and I got all the crap out of that. All right, guys, big progress today. Obviously, the front end of the truck is off. I did that so I could get to these bolts, take these hinges out. And so I ground off all the rusty shit under there. Rockers are off. Obviously, this thing's a crusty piece of junk, but we'll fix that in time. So built the jig that's going to support this cab so that way I can get it all built. Now it's time to wheel this back in the garage and start welding. I'm going to weld this section. I'm going to weld this where this is supporting the floor. And then up here, whenever I find my top distance, I'll clamp that and either bolt it to it or weld it. And then I'm gonna weld a stud in here, and this will support the cab whenever I cut the floor out in the future. And then the last thing I'm gonna weld over here is a little 1/4 inch thick block, basically, so that way this hinge sits right on it and then you just stick the door on, and it's pretty well exactly where it needs to be. And then you just stick bolts in it. You don't have to sit there and adjust it 1,000 times. Did that on Maximus too. It helped a lot. I tacked the rocker up here. Had to modify it a little bit because obviously this is not for a Suburban. It's full length for like a single cab. Anyway, that is my distance that I'm going for there. So now I know how long the bottom of the jig needs to be, and I can go off of my door there. It's got a giant dent in it there. But anyway, it's parallel with the bottom of the door. The door's parallel up here. So we're square, basically, is what I'm getting at. Now that that side has the bottom distance that I need, now I need to figure out this distance. So I can definitely weld a rocker to that. I haven't even ground that off yet, so I'm gonna have to do that here shortly. But the problem is there's no B-pillar here. First thing that I'm gonna do is take this out. Since this was not a functional door, I definitely do not need this here anymore. You can see there's spot welds, so I'm gonna drill out all those and all these spot welds, and I'm gonna pop this thing away from this one, and then I'm just gonna fold this one over where this used to be to make this pillar. And then up here, I guess we'll do pretty much the same thing. All right, guys, here we are sometime later. I cut out that inner piece I was talking about. I wire wheeled it. I ground off some of the burrs from the drills. And anyway, I folded this back over. All these spot welds I drilled out, and then I pulled this down. I stuck a pry bar in here backwards in these holes and just pried it. And it pulled this down out of the way, and I folded this upper piece back in on itself. And so what I'm gonna do now is go through here, and right at this corner, I'm gonna cut this one completely out, because 2 reasons. The 90-degree angle needs to be going the other way, and B, because it has all these holes in it from when it was a Suburban, and we don't need all those holes up there. While we're still cutting stuff, we're gonna come back up here and cut this out. I'm gonna cut 3/4 of an inch further out than that, so that way when I get the other pillar in here, I can fold this metal over it and give myself extra to weld to. And then I'll cut around this, and then I'm gonna go outside these spot welds and then on up, and then I'm gonna come over here and cut this out. All right, here we are. This is cut out. And now this fits it, kind of, sort of. Still got a lot of figuring out to do. I know, this thing's super crusty. I'll replace all that, don't worry. This is cut out too, so now the door can fit up there. Also, what I'm about to do is cut this hinge, because there's only going to be the back 2 holes now, and then I'm just going to go ahead and take the glass out of this, because it's not going to be in this door anymore after this. And this door already has a latch in it, so we'll leave that in there. We'll get the windows out so it's a lot more lightweight, and then we're going to start staging it up there. So here's what we've got done so far this morning. I welded these back pieces on both sides, and then my up and down supports, so that way this thing doesn't sag. And then these are still vice gripped up here. So we'll get all this crap cleaned out of here, and then we're going to lift the cab off the frame. We're going to leave it hanging for a while, roll the frame out from under the truck. The frame outside, we're gonna cut the cab mounts off, and we're going to come back in here with the Bobcat and stage this short bed up behind this cab, and then we're gonna stick my 20x12s up next to it, and then basically stage this pickup truck. What's up, guys? We are getting 2 things done at the same time. We are grinding off cab mounts and cleaning up leaves. All right, guys, we have a beautiful Midwestern day on our hands. It's raining. Anyway, the Chevys are inside hiding from the rain, taking up all of my space. So we're gonna do what we can over here. We got our extra fender out since the GMC fender's outside. So what we're about to do here is grind out the rest of these rivets because I just cut the front of them off yesterday. So we're gonna make cab mounts so that way this thing's being supported by the frame as well as the jig on the inside. So today's project, we're gonna make a brand new B-pillar. I cut this thing out of that cab in the last video, and I mean, I'm still glad I did because I can use the measurement from this distance to that one. But other than that, this thing's just, I mean, it could be patched, but it's gonna need a whole lot of patching. I mean, you can see, and then it's crusty all through there, and then there's holes through it, and then same on the inside here. So it would require extensive patching. We're just gonna build a brand new one. And we're gonna do it a little more simple. It's gonna be like the other side. The other side's a lot more square. This one's got some more curves in it where it's designed to fit like the C10. So anyway, that's what we're about to do. So here's what we're starting with. We got a piece of 18 gauge with a bent corner, and we're gonna cut it out. We're going to draw some more lines on it. We're gonna stick it in the brake, and we're gonna bend it all up and put holes in it and then cut it up some more, and then it'll be a B-pillar. All right, here we go. We got her bent. She's all pretty and sanded down, cut, but we got a lot of modifying to do still to get this thing to fit perfectly in here. So we'll come over here, we'll bend this back where it's all beat. And we're not real worried about the cab mounts or the rusty crap down there right now. We're just making B-pillars and probably gonna be cutting the floor out of this truck. So anyway, right now I'm gonna trace some lines to cut it around this hinge section and then cut some lines up here so that way it transitions into the top of this. Well, we've come a long ways from this crusty thing. Anyway, here's where we are. I cut around this cab mount and I'm bolting it to it each time I take it on and off so that way it's in the exact same spot. I trimmed around this. I don't have metal on this side, so it just ends where it butts up to this thing as of right now, and I'll get to that in a second. We're real freaking close, and obviously you'll just clamp this and spot weld it. But I'm gonna have to cut this thing or beat on it a little more to get this angle where it starts to bend over to the B-pillar that's already there. But we're real close. It's all springing apart right now, but I mean, there it is. I mean, it's real close. So I'll have to trim it just a little bit. That piece is overhanging some, and trim it right there where it's overlapping. And then we'll make something to fill over this eventually. I mean, the hinge is gonna be right in through here somewhere, and then another one down here somewhere. So we can't weld it all together yet because we got to get to the back side of it. And I'm going to just drill and tap some brand new pieces, a 1/4 inch, to make these things. So that way we don't have to deal with crusty junk. Two things I got to do to this to make it like the other side. So this overhang here, cut a slit right here and then butt a piece of angle iron up to it where I want it to bend, and then come over here and give it the pecker and bend it over, and it's gonna sit behind this piece. And that's how the other side is made, because this piece here, the back section of the B-pillar, is welded to a 90-degree on the front section of the B-pillar. So we're gonna make it just like the other side. Just like this, nothing fancy. This is folded back there. That's how the other side's made. So what I'm gonna do now is go get the drill, and I'm gonna drill some holes in some random spots over here, and I'm gonna start clecoing it. That 1/8 inch gap there is what I'm trying to fill, because this, I don't wanna pull it together like that. It's a little bit too far. So, like, this is where this is happy at. 1/8 inch piece in there that's like a 1/2 inch wide or something, and there's already holes on this side. I don't guess I'll need those, but either way, I'm gonna cleco that. I did the same thing on the pillars on Maximus, where I just needed to shim it just a little bit to make it right. All right, we have reached our final form. So we are all the way together minus welding. So all these gaps, like there's a gap here, it's got to be welded. This gap's got to be welded and ground down. This gap is pretty big. That's just one cut right there, actually, and then I just folded that backwards. So it's pretty big for one cut. Anyway, I mean, it has to lean to get that angle. And then there's a gap over here still. I'll have to make sure all this is pulled together. And then clamp this and weld that, obviously. So what we're left with here is finding out where our holes need to be, and then welding, of course. We're gonna patch right here too. We'll probably just remake this whole freaking area. So that needs to get done. The next thing that I'm gonna do, though, before I start on that, is take this rocker that's perfectly good and brand new, and I'm gonna start chopping it up. So cut this section out, and I'm gonna cut this curvy thing out of here, and that way it'll fit around the bottom of this pillar and make sure all this fits together and we're the right length down here before I weld anything permanently. One more thing that will have to get done. Obviously, we'll pass the other side first before we do this over here, but this area right here, I'll put the nuts on the inside, and then the nuts will also be welded to this sheet metal, so that way it is a threaded area. I did that on Maximus too, so that way you could bolt running boards or whatever from the inside, and there's brand new nuts in here, and it'll hold them up. So that's how the running boards are mounted to Maximus. So that has to get done here too. And then same thing back here with these super crusty items. Cut this rocker up so that way it fits this area. Obviously it's gonna need to be clamped and spot welded and whatnot. So anyway, where we're at with this thing now is getting the doors to where they're gonna fit that section. So I figured the best way that I can do this is just take the door skins off. So you can see I've already started pulling some of this door skin off, and it's a pain in the butt. So that's gonna take a while. Not to mention all of this. This door is in wonderful condition. So here's progress since the other day. We got a door without a door skin. I took it off there, and it's rusty down at the bottom. So what we're gonna do here is cut this door skin. I'm not exactly sure where yet because it's gonna depend on the other door, and then we're gonna cut it as far forward as we can right there. That door we haven't messed with yet, so we're gonna end up making this door first, I've decided. So I've got my line drawn on the Suburban door here. I'm gonna zip it right through there, and then right there. And then here's our inner line. We're going around this, and we're using this out of the new door, or out of the other door rather. So this body line will integrate in with the other body line, and then this whole panel will be one piece off the other door, the full length one, like the front doors. And then we'll scab it together, make sure it's square, and then we'll stick it on the truck. All right, so we have this door skin tacked together. This body line and this body line do not even come close to lining up, but that's fine. I was gonna cut the bottom of this door out anyway. It lines up with this door, and then the back of it lines up with the cab, but I got the inner door in there right now, so it's not closing all the way. So we're gonna have to do some more trimming. You see there, it overlaps a little bit. Same thing down here at the bottom. So what I'm gonna do is take this completely off the truck and over to the table, and I'm gonna butt it up because this fits in there. That's the door it came off of. Already wire wheeled in there too, by the way. Not the bottom, because the bottom is disgusting and I'm gonna replace it. So anyway, take it to the table, set this in this edge where it goes, and then trim out little sections over there until this all butts up together, and then tack that. And then I'll have an inner shell tacked together and this section of the door skin tacked together. And I'm gonna eventually take the door skin off of that Suburban too, since I haven't drilled that out yet. So here's first draft. We're too close at the top corner, but that's easy to fix. I'll just cut that and shorten it just a hair. But our door gap is pretty good, but of course the corner of the door's crinkled there. The whole bottom's gonna get replaced anyway. You can see how far that body line is off, but like that one lines up and then this one lines up. So I don't know why it's like that. I mean, this is two different trucks. I ran into the same thing when I did this truck. You know, there's multiple pieces in here. The sections of this door here out of the 63 Chevy were slightly different than the 64 Chevy, but I mean, anyway, we're definitely moving in the right direction. So anyway, here's the inside of the door. It fit together pretty close. I did have to trim out just a hair right there. I cut out too far right here, at least I thought. But now that I've got this door open, I cut this out. I think what I'm gonna do here is cut these welds and cut a section of this out, so that way the whole door can pivot that way, because it's just a hair too low to latch. So I need to build it to where it's gonna latch properly, so that way when it's all welded together. Because I can't just adjust the hinges, because then this line up here would be screwed up, because that line right there is correct right now. All right, guys, I took this apart and adjusted it, and now it's quite a bit closer, as you can see. Cut out in through here again. I left these welds and I cut those out just so that way I could pivot the whole door. But anyway, we line up a whole lot better now. The door skin is not attached, so it's just doing whatever it does. So anyway, yeah, there it is. It lines up, it latches, the door's latched. So what I'm gonna do now is take this door off, take it to the table, and repair the rust on the bottom. And I may end up bending my own piece to go right there, depending on how much metal I got. Come on now. Three and 5/8, right? Yep, that looks right. Yep, that's right. Shit. All right, whipped that up nice and easy like you guys saw it right there. So now time to start cutting and patching. Once we get this done, then we'll come up with something for these areas. I made some of these for Maximus here. I made a die out of metal so that way, because these are like raised here and then flush with this there. So I'll have to find that or make a new one. Same thing over here. I'm not gonna make these fancy crinkle things that are in there. You can kind of see there's no point in all that fanciness. Guys, I need a new tripod for the camera. So if you're watching this, definitely subscribe. So that way I can afford one. All right, let's get after it. Yummy. This thing here that I was fighting with is the window stop. We'll mess with that in a minute. And then this piece here appears to be spot welded to the internal structure. So we're going to have to find those and drill them out right quick. Oh, we need another drill bit. One out of two. And we're not going to worry about connecting that to the lower door skin right now because we're going to replace that. A little more. What's up, guys? It is literally a week later, but here's where we left off last Tuesday. The bottom of this thing is in, and so I cut out the corners. And now I've got this corner made. Well, I haven't cut it out yet. But anyway, this is made, and it's going to get scabbed in here in a second. And then I've cut this piece out over here, and it's traced out, and we're about to cut it. Here we are before grinding. That corner's a little, it comes way out. So I'll just straighten that up with the grinder. And then it's just a little bit wavy there, so I'll take a hammer to it. But we got a lot of grinding to do. So once I get done with the grinder here, I'm also gonna wire wheel this whole thing. So this is welded all the way up through here. I'm not gonna weld in all these gaps. I don't think it's necessary. I got enough welds here that it's gonna hold it all together. And then that's all the way welded together. And then same thing up here. All right, guys, here is where we have gotten to. You can see this seam, but that's fine. It'll take a skim coat if I even decide to do that down there, because it's not gonna be that visible. It is on the side of the door that swings open though, so be slightly visible. Anyway, here's all this. This is patched in. That's where I welded the window stop thing on the inside. Got a seam right through here. And then that seam. All this up through here. I ground that so that way this inner piece will sit in there. That seam's pretty good. And then this seam up here, you almost can't even see that one. So So the last thing that I'm gonna have to do to this door is put the wing window thing that goes right there. So I'm gonna go measure the Suburban door and see whereabouts it's at, and then I'm gonna cut the wing window mount out of the Suburban door and set it back here. So it is, so it's this thing right there. And then that of course holds up the wing window, which isn't actually a wing window on this, but that's what it looks like. All right, guys, I got this piece in here. And while I was here, I was like, well, you know what? You know, we got this door open. Might as well make a window that works. So this piece is out of the opposite side door because it's going in here backwards. And that's going to be the window guide. So there's a hole right there, right where that bolt is. So hopefully we can get lucky with that. And then this will go somewhere down here. So we're going to do it the same way that I did on Maximus. I took this piece of Luan wood and just shaped it into a window, and it was wooden windows for a while. And then I took those to the glass shop whenever I had them all built and told them I need those in the form of glass. And then they did that. And so now that's how the windows in this truck got made too. All right, guys, here we are. We are back on the truck. Looking pretty good. Got a bunch of brand new metal in this thing. Might have to do a little bit more work on this corner here. But anyway, here we are. I put the door latch mechanism back in. We got a window, kind of, sort of. I'm going to have to lengthen it just a hair. There's no door seals in there, and that's part of the extra distance that this thing would be. You know, there'd be rubber door seal up front there. But that's in there. It fits pretty close. And then this one, it fits pretty close. I'm gonna have to make a, you know, this is just a first draft. Of course, this one doesn't have door seals either, but that's the shape that window is gonna be. And it sags right there. So I'll make something to hold it up at the bottom. Anyway, let's look at the inside now. That's gonna fall. That looks good. All this is together in here. There's this thing. I didn't weld it all the way around. You know, just a couple spot welds here and there. And cut off that extra area because it was hanging over here. And then I kind of transitioned this into that. It's not super important there. All this is going to be hidden. It's going to be behind the door panel. So anyway, while we're here, we're just going to go ahead and go above and beyond. So here is a door panel. I'm not going to use this one. This one is absolutely terribly crusty. So I don't know what somebody was thinking when they did all that. But hypothetically here, we're gonna have to cut just a hair out of it since I shortened the door just a little bit. Actually, the door skin is full length, but it's shorter here because I used the Suburban front half. So that way all this stuff fits that pillar. And that's why I made this door the way I did. So anyway, there's this thing. The last thing we're gonna do in this video is cut a hole right here where the seam is for this speaker. And then that's going to cover 90% of that seam, and it's going to have to get done at some point in the future anyway. All right, guys, there it is. There is a hole for a speaker. Now let's throw this speaker in just to test fit it. we're looking good so far. Well, of course, this is an old used speaker that's probably been dropped 15 times. So we're going to get brand new ones whenever the time comes. And of course, the kicker speakers have that little cage thing over them that looks cool. So that'll be on there. And then we'll have a nice, pretty door cover thing up there, the inner panel. And we'll just leave the speakers exposed on this truck. So well, there it is, guys. I'm going to call it for this video. I have got to get some other things done. And by that, I mean starting to paint this truck. So that is what next video is going to be all about. But anyway, here we are. Here is our speaker. I didn't even think about that before I welded this whole area. But, oh well, you know, practice. So anyway, that's cut out of the Suburban door. Doors are joined right there. Took this thing. It is almost full length. You have to cut just a little bit out to get that. And then this is cut out because it was this thing for the front wing window. Used to be, at least. So anyway, here's our door. Look real good. There's a speaker. Now I got a little bit of work to do right there, but we're all brand new metal at the bottom. We're looking real good. And before I put this thing back together, I'm going to master coat or pour 15 or something on the inside and then prime everything on the inside. And I'm going to get brand new door skins instead of trying to mess with that old junk. So another thing I'd really like to do to this door, but it's just not going to happen today, is put bear claw latches in it like I did to this truck. Make sure this junk's out of the way, because these control the steps, of course. So there's bear claw latches in here. So it's going to be very similar to this in that door eventually. And if I had some bear claws sitting around, I would just go ahead and do that, but I do not have them sitting around, so we're just gonna leave this in here for now. Anyway, window rails, they're done. Mock-up windows are done. I'm gonna make those a hair bigger. Also, I need to get seals in there to make sure that they're gonna be perfect before I go and get these cut. And then the only other thing that I got to do inside this door is windows, because I just left that mechanism out because somebody has done the really smart thing where they take vice grips and stick it on there and just rounded off all the splines. So the ones that came out of this door and then the other side door are completely junk. Anyway, we are in a shape. It's starting to look really cool. I'll hang the door skin on there right quick just to give us like an idea. But of course, that's not the one I'm going to use. All right, guys, there it is. I stuck the door skin back on. So here is a shape. That's what we're going for. This thing is starting to look real good. Of course, it will have brand new door skins on it eventually. So anyway, we'll have to do a little bit of work on the roof line there because the doors have just a little bit of a sweep, and if you look at the C10s, they do too. So we'll have to make this Suburban roof kind of transition down and sweep like the door does. But we look really cool. I love this body style. And we got a full-length rear door. The time that I have in this so far is about a day and a half. And so anyway, this side of the truck, I have not messed with it at all since I got to this point. So I ended up making that door first, and now I know exactly what to do, what I'm going to want to do over here. So I think the next thing that I'm going to do on this side is take the door apart, to be honest, like that one. Take the skin off the door and then figure this thing out. And of course, before I weld all that together, it'll be primed back there. And then from there, we'll build us another door and then rockers, and then we'll fabricate the top of this thing. And as for next video, we got clips right here. We got brand new single cab long bed trim up there. So we're gonna put trim on this truck. Of course, it does not go around the dually fenders, so we're gonna cut it out around the dually fenders, and we're gonna use that whole section of trim that we cut out, and that's gonna fit our door. That's why single cab long bed trim is gonna work for this truck. Anyway, we may change this up as we go, but that's the first thing we're doing in the next video. We may move this up there, and we may stretch it all the way out the front if we are able to do so. But that has to be done first because we got to make sure all of our holes are drilled and everything's happy. And then from there, we're gonna take everything back apart and prime the doors. We're going for the doors first. So I'm gonna strip the doors down, pull the mirrors off, pull the glass out, pull all the wiring out of the doors, and get the doors in primer. And we're gonna paint the doors, the outside of the doors first, and then the inside, because it's gonna be much easier to have everything blue and then tape a nice perfectly straight line in here, and then everything be metallic gray like that. So that's what's coming up in next video. We'll see you guys then.